Welcome to the Whisky Wealth Warrior podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer, and on this show, it is for those who respect the craft of fine spirits and think long term about wealth. Each episode features industry insiders, serious drink professionals within the industry, and connoisseurs, cutting through the noise with real time insight and real experience. Now, before we dive in, a very quick word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Whisky Wealth Mastery, where serious investors learn to build wealth through whiskey casks the right way. No hype, no get rich quick, but structured, data-driven investing that quietly a powerful asset class that has historically delivered between 8 and 12% plus on annual growth. Now, if you want to know more, you can find me on LinkedIn at Glen Palmer Online, or check out the show notes to explore further. Because if you're going to play the long game, you might as well play it like a warrior. So, today's guest is Craig Potter. Now, he is a co-founder and CEO of Soda Jerk LLC. Now, it's a vodka-based 35% ABV brand now available in over 20 states, and recently awarded the Walmart Golden Ticket for California placement. Now you might be thinking, this is a whiskey podcast, and you're right, but Craig's background spans beverage scaling, retail distribution, real estate investment, land development, and building consumer product brands from scratch. He has a wealth of experience that can be transferred into whiskey. So, Craig, can't wait to dive in, learn more from your unique experience from where you have come from to where you are today. So let's jump right into this one, shall we?
No, I appreciate that. It's quite an introduction. I hope we can live up to it.
I'm sure you can. So, Craig, start off with one that I tell everybody. If time travel became a reality and you had a chance to go back in time to when you first started your career, what advice would the person that you are now tell your younger self?
That's the single greatest thing that comes to mind is buy a home at an early age and save your money. Don't live, it's the advice I give my sons at this point, is don't live up to your means, live behind your means, save your money, grow your wealth, because later in life, when you want to become an entrepreneur, you're going to need it.
Yeah. Well, man, that's wise words. To be honest, if it was me, I'd do a Marty McFly and say, put this money on the bookies.
Take it all to Vegas, put it on black, see what happens.
That's it. That's it. Then you can start building wealth with the money that you make from there. Anyway,
Agreed.
so Craig, launching and scaling a 35% ABV product across 20 states, mind you, isn't really that simple. What are the real operational challenges that people really underestimate in the beverage distribution?
This is a tremendously difficult question for a founder, a co-founder to try to find answers to, because the people that have the secret sauce will not share it,
Yeah.
because it's been a really difficult road for them. I think one of the things that I did very early on is I listened to a couple of podcasts. There was a brand called 21 Seeds Tequila that the lady, Kat, she did a podcast for someone. And then there was another one that was done by the brand Buzzballs, or the lady that created that brand got on a podcast and they shared some insight. And it's the only time I've really been able to see that kind of honest communication from founders. And, we launched this brand in the middle of COVID. So we had
Wow.
that interesting wrinkle as well. And I told myself, I said, hey, I know it's going to be a much more difficult challenge, but we're ready. It was many years of prep and work and creation and formulation. Once we were ready, I didn't want to hold off until the things got better. But during that time, you couldn't get a distributor to bring a new brand in because they couldn't taste it with anyone.
Of course.
Obviously, trying to raise money for an alcohol brand in the middle of COVID was not easy, even though alcohol sales were going through
Through
the
the roof.
roof. Yeah. We were all sitting at home drinking because we couldn't go anywhere and do anything. So That side of it was pretty difficult to overcome that. And we managed to do that. We managed to raise our money from friends and family. And what I would say a lot of blue collar people
Mhm.
wanted to be a part of the ride with us. And, some of those people that came on board were not high net worth individuals. They were people that said, hey, I've got some extra money I've got set aside for something I'd love to invest and be a part of the journey with you. So that was the initial part. Then the most complicated and difficult part for any alcohol brand is two steps: finding distribution, so good distribution partners, because you need a distributor in every state you want to do business. And then the other
Yeah.
thing is trying to make noise or get attention from that distributor. And those things really kind of go hand in hand. We were not able to get aligned with what you would call the top tier distributors right away in the business. We literally, because everything was shut down during COVID, one of our first distributors, our very first state, was Kansas. It was a distributor out there that was willing to take a chance on us, and the fact that somebody believed in what we had created meant everything to me at the time. And so
Yeah.
we jumped in with them and made a trip out to Kansas and started selling the product in Kansas, which it would not be number one on the list for most, beverage brands. Um,
Hmm.
so once we got past that, then it was a matter of another thing that we stumbled across that I'll share on here for anyone else to see is that very early on we got introduced to a company. It's cwspirits.com. They have an influencer program where they have at the time about 200 influencers, and they would make cocktails with your beverage, and they would try to drive those people back to their brick and mortar store here in Southern California, and they would ship the product out. Uh, what we didn't expect, and because we just did it kind of a whim of someone saying, "Hey, here's an opportunity," and at that time we were pursuing every opportunity. We were
Yeah.
probably spending money on things you didn't need to spend money on, but we needed to learn what worked and what didn't work. And then this influencer program took on a life of its own. We were selling 250 cases a month through this one store
Wow.
here in California. But what they didn't see that we saw was, we had distributors from Wisconsin and from Arkansas and from Florida, and the largest liquor store chain in Florida reached out to us directly and said, "Hey, we keep getting searches on our website for your product. What is it?" And
Fantastic.
6 months prior, I would call 25 distributors, and I'd be lucky if one of them said, "Send me some samples." So it's the what we call block and tackle part of the business, where if you believe in what you've created and you feel like you're filling a niche in the industry, you've got to go out and work it hard. And it's the most competitive industry I've ever been involved in by far.
Yeah.
So it's not the easy road. If you don't have the right budget behind you or the right fortitude to push through the hard days, this isn't the industry for you. But if you have those things and you feel like you've got something that's worth moving forward on, there are definitely some paths for you.
Yeah. And man, it's the grind, isn't it? It's you've got to keep on if you've got a project that you truly believe in, you've just got to go through, push through the noise. And like I say, you never know what might happen. Perfect example is that influencer program. You know, I believe that if you stick to your guns and you believe in what you have created and achieved, something somewhere along the line will come to fruition. So yeah, kudos to you. So you mentioned also in your LinkedIn bio that the Walmart awarding you that golden ticket. So what did securing that Walmart placement actually require behind the scenes? And how does national retail change your growth strategy?
National retail can turn a tiny brand into a national player overnight. You can make a mistake and go too early, where you can get good placement or a trial in a chain of stores that you put a lot of importance into and not perform well because the brand doesn't have enough recognition, and you
Hmm.
can lose your opportunity, and then it's difficult to get back in. But as far as, the process for us was, I was very lucky in this business that I was able to get an industry veteran that had worked for Diageo and managed some pretty popular brands there. I got him to come on board with me, and show me, introduce me to the business. I have a tremendous sales background and branding background, but I didn't know this industry when I got in. We applied through a service called Range Me, which is where a lot of the chains, they don't want to deal with you directly. They want you to join this Range Me platform, and then you upload all of your brand information on there, and then you apply to different opportunities. And Walmart does this thing every year called Open Call,
Hmm.
where 4,500 brands apply, and they select about 400 to come back to Bentonville, Arkansas, and you get a one-on-one, 30-minute meeting with the buyer in your category. But what no one kind of prepares you for is that Walmart really kind of rolls out the red carpet for the people that they invite back there. The day prior to, they have this huge meeting in a room that's at Walmart's headquarters, and Walmart's new headquarters are amazing. If you haven't been there, it's like a
Oh,
college campus out there. It's multiple buildings. It's beautiful.
yeah.
But the thing that really surprised me is, you'd expect that Walmart would be this super hard to deal with. The buyers would be tough. Everything would be, strenuous on you. It was exact opposite. And I think it's part of that open call process where Walmart tries to make it welcoming to
Yeah.
everyone. They introduced themselves to you. We sat right at the front of the meeting. There's 400 other companies there. We had a tremendous meeting. They brought in Damon John from Shark Tank, came and gave a presentation to everyone about how to deliver your pitch and, other questions. And they just were very, very welcoming. They provide food and everything for you, and you get to meet other brands in the intermissions. You meet other brands that had success and got into Walmart through the open call to prepare you for the meeting the next day.
Oh,
So we went
wow.
and had our meeting the next day. We thought we'd have to educate the buyers on our product, but we really didn't have to. They knew everything about our brand, and they had seen our sales, and we didn't have a lot of chain business. The only chain we really had at that time was Total Wine, but they had seen the numbers in Total Wine and said, "Hey, you guys are doing well in multiple states here. Let's give this thing a shot." So then it was just a matter of aligning with distributors. They elected California because we had a very big distributor in California.
Yeah.
And it was interesting is like nobody tells you it took us 2 years to get the meeting with Walmart. Then we go and have the meeting in 2024, and the product wasn't in stores until a year later when they do the fall reset for the alcohol category. So it was 3 years of work to get into 44 stores as a trial. So you can imagine as a founder and the money and what it could do for your brand, you try to put everything you can behind the success of that. What's your
Yeah.
price point? You're not allowed to do a lot of stuff merchandising wise in Walmart. So you can't build displays and do things. You're just going to be on the shelf, and your brand needs to make some noise in other places. So that's where the influencer program and the social media ads that you run and the other ways that you market your brand really make a huge difference. But to answer your question on what kind of a difference that can make for a brand, you're fighting for attention, right? When you go into a market, you work with a distributor, you'll ride with sales reps, you'll do general sales meetings, you'll find ways to try to gain attention, and you need to make sure your brand's not boring, right? I mean, I see other brands that go and I have to sit through their presentation before I can give mine, and their presentations are very boring. And it's full of a bunch of details that the sales rep doesn't need. He's never going to regurgitate that to the owner of a liquor store when he's in there trying to sell your product. And you need to make it short and sweet and get to the point. So you go out into the market and you have this effect on the market for the week that you're there, however much time you're spending in that state with that distributor. But then when you leave, you're relying upon the attention that your brand is gaining in other places. So you can't lose sight of that.
Yeah. Just a quick one as well. I mean, I love the name of it, Soda Jerks. Where did you come up with that?
It was probably a 3-year process. While you're working on the flavors, you're working on the branding. And once we decided these were our flavor profiles, it took 2.5 years to get the flavors to where I was proud enough to show it to anyone that, in my family. I kind of kept it hidden away because if I couldn't pull it off, it was gonna quietly go away and no one would know. Um, the when you sit down and you're creating a brand, you have to think to yourself, what do I want this to be about? And this was kind of a side project for me at the time. I was very successful in real estate. I didn't need to do this, but I thought, okay, if I'm going to do this, it's going to be right. I'm not going to cut any corners, and I'll keep going until it meets that threshold. And I kept writing down these keywords on one of those yellow legal scratch pads. And the first thing I wrote was no negative connotation. I didn't want to offend anyone in any way with what I was doing. I didn't want to be tongue in cheek about anything that was disrespectful or could be taken the wrong way.
Yeah, yeah,
But the second thing I had is I wanted a little bit of vintage or nostalgia in there, but I didn't want to build the brand for guys my age. I'm 56 now, but at that time I was, early 50s. And I remember asking my son, because I kept coming back to this soda jerk being the vehicle for the two flavor profiles that we had. And obviously I searched it and made sure that somebody didn't already have the brand trademarked for alcohol. So I asked my son, who was 22 at the time and had just got out of college and a big whiskey guy. I said,
yeah.
hey, what?
Nice. I like him already.
Yeah, yeah. He's and he drinks all the fine whiskey when he's with dad. Um, but he I said to him, I said, hey, how do I take this soda jerk, which in the 50s, a soda jerk, there weren't canned soda, so they would pump like the cherry syrup into a glass, and then
Yeah,
they would
yeah.
jerk this lever that would get the carbonated water to come out to make a
Right.
soda. That's how they got the name soda jerk. I said, how do I make this cool for you so that you'll think it's cool? And he says, well, Dad, you're going to create your own character on the brand, right? And I said, yeah. And he says, okay, well, why can't that guy be really fit? Why can't he have a sleeve of tattoos and some scruff on his face? And it was his vision of he can be handsome, but not a pretty boy. He's a guy that goes out
Yeah.
and works hard and hangs out with his friends or rides his motorcycle or works on his 4x or, whatever it is. This is not a girls in evening dresses with heels around Ferrari's brand. This is a every man and every woman brand.
Nice.
You get home from work and you want to have a good time, but you want to get up the next day and handle responsibilities. That's really where that branding came from.
Nice. I love it. Absolutely love it. So, in the spirits, is often, but not always similar. But brands create massive valuation gaps. Where do you think about, or how do you think about brand pull, scarcity, and sort of long-term enterprise value?
Great question. Probably the hardest one to ever find an answer to if you're thinking about starting a brand. Um, I would say that some brands miss it in the beginning. So if you take a product, let's just say the product is brand A, and you take that brand into the marketplace and you didn't do the proper work on the creative side of it, whether it's making sure that your flavor profiles are correct or your branding is good or your message is good, or, how do I make this brand stand out in an incredibly crowded field? If you're not doing that work up front, then you're penalized all throughout the rest of the process, and you really can't make up for it unless your last name is Kardashian or you've got some other celebrity behind your brand.
Yeah, yeah,
If you're going to do it kind of the organic way of just making sure that it's good enough, you've got to find a way to set yourself apart. I don't understand the whiskey world as much as a lot of others do, but if you do your homework and figure out what truly would separate us from others, that's one thing on the liquid side. Because what's the thing I got asked all the time in the beginning is, well, hey, it looks really good, but is the juice any good? I get
yeah,
that asked that all the time in the beginning. And as soon as people smell our brand, they know that it's good. And then they taste it like, oh, wow, that's scary good is the result we get all the time, because alcohol that's 70 proof isn't supposed to taste this good by itself. But that's on purpose. We did it on purpose. And it doesn't mean that our flavor profile meets everyone. And any whiskey brand doesn't have to satisfy everybody, right? You need to pick your lane. Some advice I was given early on from the guy that was part of the Screwball process. He was bottling Screwball, the peanut butter whiskey, very early on, gave us some amazing advice. And he said, look, find your lane and then do that lane better than anybody else, and make sure that your
mm,
branding and everything will be better than anyone else that comes in to try to knock you off, because that will happen if you have success. Screwball was the first whiskey that I ever saw that was peanut butter flavored, and now there's tons of brands out there. I think Screwball still squashes the rest of them, but so I think it's twofold. You have to make sure you do all the work up front, right? And deep down inside, hey, have I done enough? Is this really going to cut through? Am I being biased? Share it with some industry heavyweights, see what they say about it. If it's not there, keep working. Because if you're flawed on the creation side, there isn't much you can do on the marketing side that's going to win over a consumer that tries your whiskey or your soda jerk and doesn't think it tastes great.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And one thing that I find quite interesting in spirits is that the inventory literally improves with time. Now, from your operator's lens, and both your experience in both the spirits and the toy inventory, how do you view the alcohol inventory compared to other consumer products?
I think the alcohol side for us is much simpler. On the toy side, we were making all the products over in China, tremendous quality control issues and shipping constraints and getting through customs and lots of issues from that side of it. So we had to be much more forward thinking, right? Not as much as the whiskey brand has to do. Obviously, we didn't take us 5 years to get a delivery, but when one of the reasons why we created our product, we use vodka is our main spirit, is that we can produce as much vodka as we want, as quick as we want. We do source our bottles, our glass from overseas, the same factory that where Screwball creates their bottles. But we bring enough of those in that they sit in the warehouse here in California. So, I've got the next 12 months worth of glass sitting already here in California. So I don't have to worry about
Yeah.
customs and tariffs and shipping, because the other unknown factor was a container that cost $2,000 to bring in from China, let's say, as an example. It went up to 13,000 during COVID for the same container. So
Wow.
drastically changes your glass price, what you're paying for that bottle to come over here. The other side of it, though, would be that if you have your ingredients here for our product, we produce at a company here in California called Levesque, which is one of the largest on the West Coast. They do all the
Yeah.
Kirkland vodka for Costco, and they do Screwball there, and they do a lot of national brands there. I can produce as much as I want with about a 30-day notice. So, we have regular scheduled runnings, but if I told them tomorrow, hey, I need to quadruple production, it would take me about 30 days to get the remaining flavor ingredients that I don't currently have sitting, because flavors expire. It would take about 30 days. So let's just say it's 60-day window. So I only really need to have 60 days worth of inventory in the warehouse. Now, we typically store more than that. I typically have 3 to 4 months inventory at a time. But from that standpoint, we're very different than whiskey. It just doesn't have to sit as long. As soon as it's produced, it's ready to go.
Yeah, yeah, which makes a big difference, I suppose.
Yeah.
And you've had various roles over the years, which I find fascinating. One being real estate agent, where you've sold over 400 acres and worked on major developments. So when you look at real estate versus the beverage brands, what similarities do you see in long-term value creation?
Yeah, good question. A quick note, it's like 5,000 acres that I've sold.
Whoa, sorry,
Yeah,
apologies, 5,000.
no, you're
Sorry.
totally good. You're that's an interesting question. I got into real estate. I did sales for a long, long time, and then I got into real estate because I wanted more flexibility when my kids were born, and I wanted to be able to coach their football and baseball teams and have some freedom there. That
Yeah,
freedom also comes with a huge roller coaster of cash flow that you need to find a way to be able to manage and absorb. The and remind me again the answer that question one more time. I'm sorry.
so when you look at real estate versus the beverage brands, what similarities do you see in long-term value creation?
Interesting. Real estate, the thing I love about real estate is it never goes away, right?
Yeah,
So my primary focus is land, right? Land doesn't go away. It can change over time if a city gets more difficult to develop in, or if water becomes tough to get into a region, those sorts of things, political climates in a city, those things can really change it. But what I like about real estate is it has this long-term future value that never really goes away. But a lot of properties like land, for example, you may buy a piece of land that you own for 20 years and you're paying property taxes every year for 20 years and doing weed abatement and maybe dealing with some other nuisance and dumping issues, whatever.
yeah,
Um, all in hopes that someday I'm going to sell it for X, and I'm going to look back and my return on investment is going to be, 10% a year, or whatever it is. I've had some projects that were 4,000% return in 3 or 4 years, but I've
Oh,
also
wow.
had ones that I've owned for a good length of time and sold for less than I paid. So that part of it can be volatile. I think it's a little more predictable, but it's very cyclical. I think the alcohol business is much more linear in that, whiskey's enjoyed a boom, I would say, at least the last 10 years that I've been paying attention to the numbers.
Hmm.
Whiskey's done phenomenal, and it's never going to go away. We know that. The process maybe gets refined over time, but in a lot of ways, it's still produced the same way that it was. I went back to Jack Daniels' place in Lynchburg, Tennessee, when we were in Nashville, and toured the place, and it was amazing how it didn't feel like 21st century technology. It felt like they were still creating it the way they did back in the day. So that part of it is there. As far as the similarities and value, I think it's a little tougher to kind of correlate the two, because what one product has to sit for 5 years. So there's all this work that a whiskey producer has to go through to create these barrels, and then they have to sit in the rack house for 5 years before you can sell it. And if you're good, the juice is good at the end, and you hope you've created enough of a following that there's a market for this juice, and not an overabundance, or hey, I missed it and I got to start again. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a difficult question to assimilate the two. But I'll give you a quick example. I bought a project with a partner up in Merced, California in 2018, and we finished the project. We built 63 homes and sold all those homes within a couple of years. But then the remaining site was an apartment site that took us probably 3 years to exit from. And at the end of that was probably a 5, 6 year window. And
Yeah.
the result at the end of the day was phenomenal, and people would be very impressed with that. But I mean, you have to invest and spend 5 years with the hopes, in the same way that whiskey is, with the hopes that, hey, when this barrel is ready, there's going to be a market. There's going to be people that are excited about distributing it, excited about buying it at retail, and I can create some kind of a following so that when people see it, they remember that that's a quality product.
Yeah. And as previously mentioned, you've operated in toys, real estate, beverage industry now. Where do you see investors misunderstand value creation most often?
Good question. I think that investors are going to beat you up on value creation, right? What are the metrics they're going to look at? They're going to look at, what kind of sales are you doing? Are your sales increasing? Are your sales declining? Are you flatlining? What's happening? Do you have a plan? Um, there's so much that goes into the valuation side of it, and I would imagine that whiskey is probably pretty different, because you're you're creating this rack house somewhere that's got all these barrels, and the barrels are legitimate assets that are sitting there. What we're doing for our particular brand is a little different than that. So I think that's kind of a tough question to answer.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when you throw into ChatGPT and you get a bunch of different answers, and you have to kind of dissect. I also think it's important to talk to other heavyweights in the industry.
Yeah,
Not
definitely.
not everyone has an open ear, though, right? To spend
Yeah.
time with you. But I was very fortunate. There's a gentleman in Austin, Texas, Eric Dopkins, who was one of the people behind Deep Eddy vodka. Eric's a very successful guy. He sold that brand for $500 million, many years ago, and now he has 5 or 6 other brands. But he knows the game. He knows the business. He's been in it his whole life.
Yeah.
He's doing it right. His office is amazing. His people are great. He'd be someone that, if you could ever get some time with him, he gave me about an hour and a half one day, or I could just pick
Wow.
his brain. So when you have a chance to meet with people like that, that are willing to share time, it's huge. Also, I had a really good conversation a couple of different occasions with, oh gosh, his name is Carl. Can't think of his last name, but he was the president of Screwball. And he, after Pernod Ricard bought Screwball, he was still there for a year. But after that, now he's free to do whatever he wants to do moving forward, looking for another project. And I had some very good conversations with him where he shared some wisdom with me that, I might not be able to get if I paid, $50,000 at a seminar. They might not give me that wisdom, and he threw it out pretty free and easily because we're supposed to pass this stuff down.
Yeah.
Whatever I share with you is not going to hurt my brand. If somebody else out in the world takes some of this information and creates a good brand, it's not going to hurt me. So we're supposed to share it.
No, I love that ethos. I love that philosophy. Just a quick one before we wrap up. Have you ever thought about taking whiskey and putting it into soda jerk as a new stream? Or
You know,
is that
we're
because
constantly looking at stuff.
I would be your first customer. I would taste that.
We're constantly looking at stuff and trying to figure out ways to make the brand better. I think the other important thing is you have to decide what is your foundation, right? Like if you're going to build a 50-story building, the foundation needs to be anchored. The footings need to be solid. Everything needs to be done right. The soil needs to be great. If you do all that properly, you can start stacking floors on it and it can hold the weight
Yeah,
of it. And you learn as you go, how do I fill the next floor of office space, right? You learn things. You need some
yeah,
luck. You need the economy to be in your favor. But yeah, I think that definitely sets you on the right path. Is make sure that your foundation is strong. That's the best thing because you're going to rely on it. You're gonna have times where you're having it feels like the building's leaning, or you're trying to find your footing, and it can be a slippery slope sometimes, and everyone's going to doubt you.
yeah.
So make sure that foundation, what you base the brand around, its core, is good, and surround yourself with good people. Make sure if you bring on a financial partner, make sure that they're of similar character to you. Um, those things are huge when you face tough times, and every single entrepreneur is going to face tough times.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Well, Craig, this was a really interesting conversation from brand and your distribution perspective. Ah, man, I love this conversation. And once again, thanks to my listeners and viewers of YouTube as well. Just before we go, Craig, we've talked a lot about Soda Jerk. If somebody wants to find out more about what you guys are doing at Soda Jerk, how can they do that?
Simple. Just go to sodajerk.com. That's our website, and all the social media tags, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. It's Soda Jerk Shot with no spaces in between.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you very much. That almost wraps up today's episode. I want to thank my guest for joining me on the show and sharing his passion with me. Before you go, quick reminder, this episode was brought to you by Whisky Wealth Mastery, where serious investors learn how to build wealth through premium whiskey casks the right way. No hype, no shortcuts, just structure, data-driven strategy, and an asset class that has historically delivered 8 to 12% annual growth. If you ever wondered whether whiskey is something that you own, grow, and monetize, not just drink, might be worth taking a closer look. You'll find the details in the show notes below or connect with me on LinkedIn. You've been listening to Whisky Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer, and I was joined today by Craig Potter. Thanks again for listening and watching, and I will see you on the next episode.